Hello YouTube, this is Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you today. Now for this one we're going to head back to Denmark and do another one of the Danish Gypsy Brewery's beers. This is the Thistle Reparationsbajer, and when I was researching this one it was quite interesting. The name Reparationsbajer apparently means recovery beer in Danish, and it was quite interesting because they say that this is meant to be for you when you've been on a night out the night before and you drink this after that, so it'll be quite interesting to try. But this is another one I've picked up from Thistle News on Holborn Street in Aberdeen. So as I've said in numerous videos, if you are watching from the Aberdeenshire area of Scotland, the Facebook link is in the description of the video, so check that out if you are interested, and you'll also find the links there to my other Thistle beer reviews, and you can also search through the channel and see if there's anything else that's of interest to you as well. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll just take you through a little bit of a history of the brewery, as I quite like to do. This one's got another interesting history. It's linked to the mek-ju Danish Gypsy Brewery, of course, but if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to fast forward towards the last few minutes of the video and you will catch that particular segment. But anyway, the history of the brewery goes back to 2005 when Tobias Emil Jensen and Tori Gainter were talking to their university teacher Mikael Borg-Bjerg, so obviously well known as being the big boss of mek-ju, and they said it was a shame that most Danish breweries had focused on how to make their beers over the last 100 years rather than simply focusing on the taste and the content of their beers. But the three of them all agreed that the only way to make quality beers was to do it themselves, and so they did this. Now their university allowed them to brew in the school's kitchen overnight. However, this meant that they were restricted to brewing between the hours of 10 PM and 6 AM on weekdays, which they say resulted in some very long school days for them and their teacher. However, this was where Tobias and Tori's hunt for a quality beer without compromise began. Now later Mikael obviously went on to found the mek-ju Brewery, which has obviously become very popular in the last few years with international recognition. But Tobias and Tori continued to craft brew until 2010 when they founded the Thistle Brewery, and this literally means two beers in Danish, and they made their first commercial brew. Now when Mikael heard that his old students were commercially brewing, he insisted that they made a collaboration beer together, and this became the first Thistle beer, known as 2PA or IIP. I'm not quite sure exactly how you say it, but since this point they've continued to brew beers that push the boundaries, and they insist on using the best possible raw materials and never compromising with the taste of this beer. They're like a hardcore craft brewery, basically, very experimental. Another really cool brewery. But despite their short existence so far, the brewery have received really high acclaim and attention in the craft beer world for this non-compromising brewing style, and they now export to over 30 different countries worldwide, and this encompasses Europe, North America, South America, the Far East, Australia, and I believe New Zealand now as well. But as is the case with mek-ju, they're a gypsy brewery, and so they don't own their own equipment, and they use the spare capacity at other large breweries, and they believe that this ensures the best possible quality and the widest variety in their beers, and it also leaves them a lot of room for experimentation and collaboration with other brewers. I believe the most recent one I saw them collaborate with was the Buxton Brewery in England, but their company vision is basically that they want to produce the best beers in the world and they won't compromise for anyone or anything. So great things have already happened at this brewery, and there's more great things to be expected obviously with this kind of attitude towards brewing beer. But in Reparationsbajer in Copenhagen they have a collaborative beer bar with mek-ju, which is called the mek-ju and Friends Bar, and the bar has an exclusive bottle shop and over 40 different tap beers. Interesting though, they also serve Three Floyds beer on draft due to a special collaboration, and this makes it one of the few places outside of the US that you can actually get this beer on tap. I really need to go over to Copenhagen and try and get some of the more random Tithles and mek-ju beers. I really want to do that at some point. I hear it's a very beautiful city, and every Danish person that I've ever met have been really friendly, so that's something that I definitely want to do in the future. But anyway, let's get on to this beer itself. I'll just let you have a little look at the bottle artwork and cap on this one. I'm not quite sure exactly what this label has on. I'll just bring the camera up to let you see it. To me, being a chemist, it actually looks a bit like a scanning electron microscope image. Sort of, you have the electrons fire at your target, and basically you get the image back. It actually looks quite like that. You can see the standard Thistle label on there, the standard Thistle logo, but this is a really cool label actually. I'm definitely going to keep this bottle. It looks as if it's almost like broken glass and stuff like that on this one. I'm pretty sure that must be what it is, just a really zoomed up and blacked out black and whited photo of broken glass, but it's a really cool label. I think I like looking at these things being a chemist. It's really cool. But this one is a 5.8% American style pale ale. Apparently it uses Amarillo, Centennial and Nelson Sauvin hops, and it's brewed at the De Prof Brewery in Lochristi Hoofte in Belgium, which is where a lot of Mikkeller and Tooul beers are actually brewed. And I think this is actually one of their more regular beers, if you like. When I go on the website, you can actually get the profile for this one. So I think it's actually quite widely available as well. The First Frontier was another one like this, but as I say, they're very experimental and they produce a lot of different beers, but I believe this is one that might be considered core range, but they don't explicitly state this on their website. But there's quite an interesting, when I went into the profile of this beer, there's quite an interesting description of this one. It says, the day after your tour de force in the world of alcohol, where good manners has been thrown over the shoulder, the liver has been punished, and the dance floor hasn't looked better since John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, one's physical and mental state needs to get in gear for another week of tedious paperwork. You need something to cleanse your taste buds from the taste of the cheap slave tequila. You need something to recover you safely and give you a renewed love and zest for life. In simple terms, you need a really good recovery beer, in Danish Reparationsbajer. So as I said, this is where they get the name from. The problem is that there are few perfect recovery beers. Nauseous mass-produced lagers are the last thing you want to think about after you've been making a few calls in the Great White Telephone. This is why Tooul for a long time has had the goal to develop a recipe for the perfect recovery beer. This has resulted in a lot of tough empirical field work combined with a great amount of brewing. After a year's hard work, all of the results have been gathered and the conclusion is clear. The best way to remove your hangovers is with a potent pale ale and a powerful aromatic American and New Zealand hops to give your taste buds a cold turkey combined with a nice round, pleasant and well balanced malt profile to massage the palate and reinforce your belief that one shall survive another day. So as you can see, there's quite a cool concept actually behind this beer. Really cool that you can get hungover and then there's another beer to be added to and recover from that. It's really cool actually. But let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting. As I say, it's a 5.8% American style pale ale. So it's a really cool concept actually behind these beers. I've just broken the cap there, I think, but yeah, it's alright. It's all good. But this is just a plain cap on this one, as is usual with Tooul. I kind of wish they would do their own labels on the caps, but I think it's maybe expensive for them to do that, and probably difficult because they are a gypsy brewery, as I said in the video. But let's get the rest of this guy out. Just swirl up the last little third of it to get a nice bit of head on it, which it already had anyway. As you can see, that's a big head. That's about 3 fingers actually there. But let's set this guy back down. As you can see, if I hold this up to the light here, it's a really sort of nice brownish amber colour there. It's quite hazy. I can't really see through it if I put my fingers over the other side, but it's a nice sort of brownish amber colour there. Not quite coppery, but a really nice looking beer. The head is maybe slightly tan actually, just a little bit off white. Really foamy, but a nice amount of bigger bubbles in there as well. In terms of the aroma, very citrusy, as you would expect from the hops that are in this one. Some tropical fruits as well though. And this is typical for the sort of Nelson Sauvin hops and things like that. You do get a burst of tropical and citrus fruits from this one. But yeah, it's a really nice smelling one actually. It's got a nice smell of caramel under there as well. Some nice pine resin and floral character, as you would expect a little bit. More of the pine resin actually from the American style pale ales. But there's a good bit of pale malts in there, but it's mainly the fruity notes in there. But there is an underlying bit of brown sugar in this one. This is actually a really nice smelling pale ale. I could sit and smell this all day, but let's give this guy a taste and see what it's like. And the first thing that hits you with this, it's got a bitter blast to it. It's really nice. There's a lot of grapefruit in there, and there is the citrus mixed in with that. But the first thing that does hit you, as I say, is the bitter character to this beer. But yeah, the first thing, you've got a lot of grapefruit and the citrus mixed in with that. And you've got the pine resin. The pine resin seems to be sitting right through it and coming out on the aftertaste as well. There is that big pine resin element that you would expect from the American pale ales. Maybe a Californian thing, I think in terms of the American pale ales, that's more of a Californian thing to have that kind of pine resin in there. But yeah, very typical opening of the American pale ales, but the bitterness does stick out a little bit. In the middle, you're getting a little bit of brown sugar. You're getting the honey and caramel things. Maybe biscuity malts in there. It is a quite sweet mix between brown sugar and biscuity malts, in my opinion, in the middle. I don't know, maybe just a little hint of toasted character to it as well in the middle with the malts. But as I say, there's a nice, you're getting that nice burst of bitterness in there with the fruits up front. You're getting the sort of movement into a kind of nice caramel biscuity malt body, brown sugary body in the middle. Really, really nice. And then you've just got a little hint of toasted character to that. It's actually a really, really nice one. In terms of the mouth, I would describe this one as mid-bodied, I would think. It does feel just a little bit heavier than a normal American Pale Ale. I think this is because it's got oats in it. It's got oats, barley, and and it says yeast in it as well. So I think probably just that combination is making it just a little bit heavier than a normal American Pale Ale. It's not overbearing, if you like, but it is just a little bit heavier than you would expect from a Pale Ale. But yeah, it's quite well carbonated. It comes in a little sharp and it smooths out again. There's a bit of dryness on this one throughout, actually, but as I say, the thing that's characterising this one is the bitterness. It has that nice bitter blast. The fruit comes in, it goes to the sort of caramel, brown sugary malts, just a little hint of roasted character, and that pine resin is staying with you throughout. As I say, in terms of the mouth, a kind of mid-bodied, the sort of oats and barley, I think, are making it just that little bit heavier than a normal Pale Ale. It's carbonated, nice little bit of sharpness coming in, smoothens out, and then you've got a bit of dryness throughout with a good bit of bitterness. That's the main thing with this one that makes it stand out. It's a really nice American-style Pale Ale, just with a bit of an extra bitter blast to it. Really nice in the style. If you're into the American Pale Ales, I highly recommend you try this one. And as I say, it's a good hoppy blast IPA with sort of really nice fruit mix, and the bitterness is really nice as well. And I do love the bit of fruit blast that goes with it, and the nice caramel malts as well. This is a really, really good example of an American Pale Ale, and you know, Total, you're not going to be disappointed with any of their beers that I've encountered so far. I mean, I really like this brewery, and anything that they produce, I'll definitely try it. And I really like doing the reviews for this one because you're never disappointed by any of their beers. So I highly recommend that you try this beer, and anything indeed from the Total Brewery. I would be very, very surprised if you're disappointed with anything there. A really, really good brewery, and as I say, very experimental, so you can expect some really cool things from them. Anyway, I hope this beer review has been informative for you and you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider it. As you can see, this is the Thistle Reparationsbajer. I hope it's been informative. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I'll be back soon with another video, and thanks again for watching. You've been watching Goddard Radio Moscow, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.